Hey guys, it is Doe. I'm back, and today is build order breakdown. And in case you're new, what we like to do in the show is just to pick a replay from one of the earlier matches in the week, and then basically just go into it really in depth. Study the build orders, study what the players may have been thinking. I am Doa, by the way. If you have never tuned into the stream before, thanks for joining us. And I'm a little bit sunburned, so I know I look a little bit weird, but bear with me here. And basically, what I'm doing right now is I'm just getting that replay loaded in so we can do it. What we're going to look at today is actually going to be a game from yesterday. Actually, it's going to be from the Team Liquid versus MorroW match. A very cool game between none other than MorroW playing Terran and Liquid Sheth playing Zerg. So a really cool game. The map is going to be Ohana, and we're going to take a look at it fairly soon. I thought I had everything ready to go, and then right before, literally, I'm not even kidding you, probably about 10 seconds before the show started, I realized that I hadn't actually loaded the replay into the game yet. So good job, me. Really well done, Doa. So I'm actually doing that really quick. And then once it's loaded, then we're actually going to get into the game. But basically, some of the things that we're going to look at today are going to be how MorroW sort of tailors his opening to take advantage of what Sheth may or may not be thinking, as far as his preconceived notions of how TVZ goes. Because that's really, I think, one of MorroW's great strengths, right? In terms of his Terran versus Zerg player. Because in case you didn't know, MorroW is a Swedish player, started out playing Terran, actually won a very kind of prestigious tournament at that time in StarCraft 2, the IEM in Cologne, way back in 2010. He actually won that playing Terran. Later on, switched over to Zerg, decided he wanted to play that race a little bit more, and then, at that point, began to play really well as Zerg, and then on top of that, decided not to play Zerg versus Zerg, but instead play Terran versus Zerg in that matchup. There were a couple players that did that in Brood War as well, where they were just basically picking races rather than going in and just playing the race through all matchups, ZVP, ZVT, ZVZ. MorroW chose not to play ZVZ, chose instead to play ZVT, or TVZ rather, in that matchup. So the really unique thing about that then, the unique thing about how MorroW does it, is that he plays Terran versus Zerg kind of from the Zerg perspective, in that he kind of works at finding little things that mess up Zergs because he knows all the Zerg versus Terran timings so intimately. So that's going to be what we're really going to kind of focus on, and it's going to be really cool. I'm really excited about this game. In fact, I was actually able to speak with MorroW earlier today about his build, so he was able to even offer some insight that I'll be able to share with you guys as well. And there we go. I believe we've got it. Yes, we are. We're starting the replay right now. It's loading up, and then we'll get right into the game. This is a little bit longer of a game. It's going to be, I believe it's about 30 minutes, although we're going to be concentrating on stuff that happens kind of in the first 20 minutes or so. There's stuff to watch all the way through, but it's more or less going to be that kind of time frame. So here we are, guys. The map, of course, is going to be ESV Ohana. And we are going to take a look at our Terran player. At the top left part of the map, it's going to be MorroW. Of course, normally a Zerg player, but plays Terran in his verse Zerg matchup. And then down at the bottom right part of the map, we have our Team Liquid player, Liquid Sheth, spawning as our purple Zerg. So coincidentally, this wasn't really intentional at all, but this was the very last game that was rebroadcast before we took the stream down to get things set up for my show. So if you guys have been watching in the last hour or so, you actually saw this game casted by Frank and I last night. So this I'm actually I hope a lot of you kind of are people who are watching the rebroadcast, because now you're going to get to see the game kind of from a little bit of a different perspective. I'm not going to cast the game so much as I'm going to go through and sort of point things out, and we're going to really try to analyze it. This show, I hope it's educational to some people. I hope you learn things, but more than anything, I just love analyzing replays. I love doing this kind of stuff, so I thought, why not make a show out of it? Why not put it on stream? Hopefully you guys can get something out of it too. But basically, this show is not necessarily me telling you how to play or saying, hey, look how good this is. This is me and you together kind of looking at this replay and really kind of seeing what we can find out of it, which is just really fun. I love doing this kind of thing. And honestly, I think it's something that's kind of overlooked to a certain extent, too, in the StarCraft community, where basically a lot of friends and things like that who play StarCraft, who are enthusiastic about StarCraft, they never really do this. They never really pick out a replay and like really analyze it together and say, hey, let's pause the replay for a second. Let's look at what's going on here and let's talk about why the players are doing it. It's a great way to improve. And I don't know, I think like if you've got two friends that are really, really into StarCraft, into it in a kind of in-depth level, it's fun to just go through a replay like this. So if you're not doing that, definitely do it. So taking a look at what MorroW is doing, he's going for what appears to be a very normal 1 Rax gasless fast expand, and in fact that's what it will be. There's the second command center right now, slightly adjusting the barracks. He was going to move it over a little bit more, but I believe he saw this drone coming in and decided not to move it all that much. Decided he wanted that Marine right away instead to chase out the drone. And let's pause it right away because something that I want to talk about has already started to happen here. What we have is a 16 refinery going down now. I talked to MorroW, this was supposed to be a 15 refinery instead. So let's talk about that. Now, why would MorroW want to go for a command center, gasless expand, right? And then go for a 15 or 16 gas. Ideally, this is 15 gas, remember? But in this game, he was off a little bit and made it on 16. I checked with him this morning just to make sure, which I suppose would be like night his time. But yeah, you never know. But the important thing about this to realize is that normally a lot of Terrans will go for the barracks and the command center, right? And then 2 gases. And the reason they want to get 2 gases very quickly is because they want to get that factory down as soon as possible. And with MorroW getting only 1 gas, it's going to take a little bit longer to get that factory up, right? This Sheth, though, he just goes after this SCV, does a little bit of scouting with his drone, and I think he feels pretty comfortable knowing what this is. Like, to go for a 1 Rax expand and then throw down 2 gas and go into reactored Hellions is very normal. That's not something out of the ordinary at all, right? So Sheth is probably pretty confident right now that he has a good idea of what MorroW is doing, right? So basically, MorroW not taking that second gas, using the extra minerals that he has to save up for things like this orbital command. He's continuing to make Marines, and in the meantime, he's also kind of going down here. Now, Sheth does something a little bit interesting as well. He sees that MorroW's not walled off, right? So what he does is rather than just make the 2 Zerglings initially, or sometimes 4 that you see a lot of macro Zergs do after that hatchery first, he goes ahead and makes 6 Zerglings, in fact, and he sends them across the map. MorroW, though, is going to be ready for this. In fact, here comes the SCV right now to build the factory right here, and boom, factory. So now this is completely walled off. These Zerglings are not going to do anything except for kill this SCV right here, so too bad for him. But overall, MorroW is going to be just fine. He's getting his orbital command as well, and still no second gas. So the question is, what does this lack of second gas give us, really? Well, it gives us a couple things, and that's kind of cool. This is a build that I was talking to MorroW, this morning about, and he said that the only person he knows that really uses this on a regular basis besides him is actually Thorzane, his former teammate. Now, of course, Thorzane moved over to Evil Geniuses in the recent past, but before that, he and MorroW were actually teammates, so no doubt, swapped a lot of tips and strategies with each other, developed a lot of strategies. I know MorroW's the type of guy that likes to work with other pro gamers to, hammer out builds, and it's just kind of fun and cool. So what does this 1 gas give us, right? It gives us extra minerals. That's kind of the obvious thing, right? We're going to have more minerals because of this, because we're just going to have more SCVs on minerals. If we look here, look at how many SCVs this is. This is 8 plus 5, 13 SCVs and a mule, right? Now, if you had 2 gas, you would have 3 less SCVs on minerals, hence less minerals. It's pretty basic math. Like what I'm saying right now sounds really basic, but think about what this extra mineral income gives us, right? The big thing is that it makes us able to, we'll get to that a little bit later, what the extra minerals give us, because we're not going to see that right away. It's going to give us, an earlier CC later on and a few other things, but let's skip the minerals for now. Let's talk instead about what having this barracks a little bit more free gives us, right? Because if we have the factory coming down later, that means we have more time to produce Marines early on, right? And what have a lot of Zergs been doing recently to take advantage of Terran? We'll just let the replay play for a little bit. Obviously, these Zerglings not going to do any damage at all. They're just going to kill the SCV, that's it, and get forced out, loses 2 Zerglings there. But basically, the nice thing about having more Marines is that you're less vulnerable to those really early speedling attacks that a lot of Zerg players have been liking to do against Terran players that go for the normal reactored Hellion and only have like 2 Marines and then a couple Hellions. Very, very low unit count early on, right? So this is going to be a little bit nicer for MorroW defensively, but we're also going to see MorroW take advantage of this in a little bit of a different way. So, interestingly enough, we have Sheth, right, who just observed this. He observed the factory was coming down a little bit late, saw the reactor going down, as well. It actually didn't see the reactor, but he saw the factory was coming down a little bit late. So he's like, all right, I've actually got a little bit of breathing room. So how does Sheth respond? He puts down this third base, right? Sheth's he's no slouch when it comes to ZVT, right? He knows he's got a little bit of leeway. So he's got this quick third. Right now, there's not a whole lot that Terran can do to punish Zergs for taking a really quick third in the current metagame. And when I say that, what I mean is that what Terrans tend to do in the early game right now in TVZ allows Zergs to go for this really quick third in a lot of cases on a lot of maps, right? So Sheth doing a very normal thing, taking this third, but now we'll have to watch, what MorroW does in response to this. And this kind of shows MorroW's understanding of the matchup from a Zerg player's perspective, right? He kind of has a feeling, and I talked to him this morning, and when I did, he knew Sheth was going to be taking this fast third because it was a, very common thing to do. And here's where those extra minerals come in handy. We do have that third command center going down really, really quickly. This actually ties in a little bit to actually a blog post that Artosis made recently about doing what your opponent is doing a little bit more, right? I think this is actually a pretty good example of this. MorroW knows, and he was talking about it based on what you scout and then responding to scouting, but in this case I think it applies to in that MorroW knows that it's going to be this hatch first, and he wants to just be ahead. He doesn't just want to keep up on two bases, he wants to do what Sheth is doing, playing a macro style, but a little bit more, so hence we've got this fast third command center, another symptom of not taking the second gas really quickly, right? So MorroW's going to be able to get that out of it with the minerals as well. And he's going to start this Hellion production, starting a tech lab on this barracks immediately for things like upgrades and stuff. And MorroW now able to kind of harass this third base a little bit, right? Excuse me, he's only got 4 Marines here, but look at this. He can get a good position. He can build a bunker behind this mineral line where it's nice and safe. And Sheth has to make some more Zerglings to come out of it. He can't just kind of let that sit here. MorroW actually doing a really good amount of damage to this hatchery. I mean, even if he doesn't kill it, it's worth it because he's already got it down to half-life. That's going to be something that he can take advantage of a little bit later in the game potentially, right? So Sheth coming down and defending. But look at this, 20 more Zerglings being made by Sheth right now. That's 10 larvae. That could be a lot more drones. Look at Sheth's drone count right now. 37 drones to 31 SCVs. MorroW's actually keeping up fairly well. And with this third command center, MorroW's going to be able to, maybe even exceed Sheth in income because he's going to have meals as well with that. So this is all kind of part of what MorroW is doing, as a Terran player, thinking from the Zerg player's perspective. It's kind of a unique insight, I guess, because you really don't see Terrans bunkering at the third base very often. It's very, very rare from what I've seen. MorroW, again, saying that Thorzane was really the only other person that really takes advantage of it like he does. And Thorzane, an excellent TVZer. The bunker gets done, and Sheth is actually going to have to use a lot of resources to defend this. Now, let's pause it again for just a moment. So we've got this going down on at the third, right? Now, this doesn't look very strong in itself, but Sheth is bringing all these lings over there, all these queens, and check this out. Here's when the Hellions come in, right? Brilliant by MorroW. This is kind of why this little delayed timing is so nice, right? We've got a few Zerglings coming into the May, but not a huge deal for MorroW. He's going to be able to deal with that pretty easily. But now Sheth is going to need to worry about this bunker and the Hellions on top of that. And MorroW, of course, making 2 more Hellions as well, another one queued up. But the other thing we're seeing here is he's using those extra minerals again. Remember, he gets that little bit of a mineral boost early on that he can then use for 2 engineering bays, too. So going to be ahead in economy, theoretically, or at least keeping up. And he's going to be ahead in upgrades, too. Zerg players like Sheth, for instance, have started to do a lot of double Evo, heavy Ling, Infestor play. It's been very common for a long time. And Terrans, a lot of them want to find ways to get into double upgrades themselves to kind of keep up with it. So that's pretty cool. I like it. So let's kind of unpause, see what happens here. Sheth, of course, taking some more damage. In fact, he loses a queen. That's a big investment. Hellions come in, scrape off the Zerglings. The bunker's obviously going to go down, but before it does, he's going to be able to do more damage. That queen getting very, very low again. I'm trying to remember if it died yesterday or not, but look at this. Sheth just losing so much, having to produce more Zerglings, another queen. This is really, really throwing or slowing down everything Sheth is trying to do in this game, right? So this pressure at the third has really paid off well for MorroW. Sheth's not able to use his third base really at all. Now he's making a big round of drones because he knows he's safe. But again, let's look at the unit counting station. Check it out. 37 SCVs to 37 drones. MorroW has the same worker count and mules. So if we look at the income, MorroW, sure enough, because of those mules, is actually going to be ahead in economy to Sheth. So when's the last time you've been able to see a Terran get ahead of Zerg like that? In the old days, or the old days meaning like a couple months ago, that's about it. Terrans tried to get ahead economy-wise by doing damage with Hellions here, right? Well, I'm sorry, guys, but that's just not going to happen anymore because we've got things like Spine Crawlers that can be put here. We've got Queens with 5 range now. We've got Zerg players walling in with Evo Chambers. So doing damage with Hellions at the natural expansion in TVZ is a thing of the past with the current metagame right now. It really is hard to get done, right? MorroW recognizes this and just uses this little off timing, this little variation in his build, getting only 1 gas for a while, delaying his factory, getting a few more Marines out because of it, getting that 3rd CC because of it, being able to afford 2 engineering bays really quickly. And then he also, with the gas too, if you were watching the income, gas was building up for a while, but it worked out so he was able to start 1-1 almost right after these 2 engineering bays finished. In fact, he could have, but he was microing a little bit down here at the bottom, so he didn't get the upgrades going immediately, right? But all this just subtle change in what MorroW is doing, you know, going for that 15 gas and no second gas after the gasless fast expand instead of going for the regular 2 gas factory as soon as possible and then into standard play, made such a huge difference in this game. It let him do this big push at the 3rd, almost killed the hatchery, caused Sheth to use a lot of larva, a lot of Zerglings, a queen, 2 queens actually, I believe. And so just a really good start by MorroW. Really kind of showing how you can take advantage of the metagame. You know, a lot of people will see a current metagame in StarCraft 2, and we've seen this from time and time again, right? In StarCraft 2, where people are like, oh, I don't know how this race can win with the way the game is right now. But there's always a way, right? There's always going to be an option. If players, you know, experiment with things, find things, very rarely is something in StarCraft 2 genuinely in balance. And if it is, it's usually going to become pretty obvious pretty quick, I think. And a lot of those have been weeded out already in the life of StarCraft 2. But basically, so now let's check where we've got MorroW at. Let's actually pause it. We're at about 9:40. Let's pause it. We're around the 10-minute mark. That's usually a good time if you're watching a replay to just kind of pause and look around the bases and kind of think to yourself, all right, where are both players at right now? Where are we sitting at? So let's start with Sheth. And Sheth, of course, is a Zerg player who I greatly admire. I love watching him play. And I got to say, though, he's a little bit behind this game. He's a little bit ahead on supply, but generally not as ahead as you would want to be. But let's take a look at Sheth's status right now. If we look at his main, it's not saturated right now, right? He's actually a little bit low on drones. If we look at the natural, way oversaturated here. In fact, I believe that may actually be because of a Hellion run by that I might have missed. Let me just double check. I'm curious about this. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to the point in the replay that we were, but this is another thing about watching replays. I'm going to actually show the timestamp bar. If, if there's something that you're not sure of, don't assume. Go back and look, right? All right, let's speed things up a little bit. All right, so here's the push again. We're just going to speed right past this here because I want to know how these drones ended up here because that was a bit odd. So there are the drones. Let's watch when they go down. Obviously, damage being done at the 3rd base we can see on the mini-map, but I'm just going to wait. Is that just really just was never that saturated? Okay. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so, all right, so here's what happened. Basically, this is something that's very, very common that a lot of Zergs do, even at the pro level, is you'll rally everything to 1 mineral patch, and you'll accidentally do it a little bit too early with your main, because generally you transfer some drones down here when your natural goes to kind of get things evenly spread out. But if you accidentally rally your main to your natural, you're going to end up way oversaturated your natural, not saturated enough on your main. Happens all the time, even at the pro level. So I'm sure any Zerg out there who plays is like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. So that's kind of what we have there. But let's see, let's go back to where we were, about 9:40. And then we'll look again. So, yeah, okay, so here we go. We have got oversaturation here, not enough in the main. We've got Evo Chambers getting upgrades, so that's good. Sheth getting his 1-1. That's nice. The 1-1 for MorroW, as we can see, a little bit farther. So Sheth a little bit behind in that regard. It looks like 1 gas at the main. and 1 gas at the natural right now. That's all he really needs at this point. And his third base, again, just not really getting a lot of use out of it, right? He's got a queen there injecting. He's got larva. He's making some drones now, so he's trying to get the saturated. He knows he's got some breathing room at this point. But overall, this third base has not been anywhere near as useful as Sheth would have liked it to be at this point. He is doing a little bit of a push here with roaches and lings. After forcing out Hellions, you'll see a lot of Zergs do this because they'll kind of count on Terran players going for a lot of bio initially. So sometimes you can get in there and do some damage, but a lot of times we'll see, what we had happen in this game, which is what you'll see in just a moment. And let's pause it now at the 10-minute mark to look at where MorroW is at. So MorroW, obviously building supply depots. Those are kind of nice to have. 1-1, getting pretty close to finish. And he's also got, remember, he had a bigger income initially. That's going to really boost him overall, putting down a lot of barracks. He's actually going to have 7 barracks down after this one starts and this one starts. He's already got 5 right here. So, yeah, just huge amounts of marine production. He's staying very light on gas. He took his 3rd and his 4th rather recently as well. And those are mostly for things like siege tanks, siege mode, and upgrades as well. So just a very marine-heavy style from Mao's MorroW. He's got this walled off, and he's going to go ahead and break down the rocks, and that's going to be his avenue into his 3rd base. This is a technique that you see Protoss players use quite a bit. They'll wall off this wall, and then they'll go through the rocks. You'll see it on a lot of maps, like Entombed Valley is another example where you sometimes see that. But it's generally a better way to do things than to kind of loop around like this. Sheth, of course, scouting this. He wants to know what's going on here. So MorroW now able to kind of get a really strong foothold in this game. You can see, the roaches don't want to mess with tanks, and I can't blame him, right? Why would they? So MorroW even saving a couple of Hellions here. And this is going to be a great situation for MorroW to be in. When you see players adding on all these barracks like this and taking a 3rd, which Sheth should see. Yeah, he sees the 3rd coming out. So that should tell Sheth, if he does click on the unit and sees that it's 1-1, that MorroW is probably going for some sort of push oriented around 2-2, right? Because generally, you don't usually push out around 1-1, especially if you're taking your 3rd at the same time. It can be a little bit dicey to do something like that, and that's why we see MorroW out on the map being active with those Hellions too. But Sheth, again, if we pause it for a second, he has decided to take his 4th base then. He sees that. He's like, all right, you're taking your 3rd. I will then take my 4th instead. So then I will try to stay just a little bit ahead of you. And it's kind of going back to what I mentioned a little bit earlier, that blog post that Artosis made recently about doing what your opponent is doing only a little bit more. Sheth responding, trying to stay just a little bit ahead, which is going fine. But keep in mind, as far as the workers go, Sheth still not very far ahead. 65 drones to 61 SCVs. So, that early damage that MorroW was able to do with just that slightly unorthodox opening is having a lasting effect throughout the game. Now, another thing MorroW is doing is putting down a 2nd factory. When you go really marine heavy, a lot of times it'll be good to kind of augment that, to kind of catch up, so to speak, with a 2nd factory producing siege tanks. And there's the tech lab going down on that right now. Not going into Starport Tech for quite a while, actually, as we can see. Excuse me, as we can see here. GoCWBC is online. I always forget to set myself to busy. Someday, someone will abuse that. But not this day. Nope. And MorroW, of course, being a Terran player that also plays Zerg versus Terran, as a Zerg player knows that it's nice to have wall-offs because you don't want to be prone to things like Ling run-bys and stuff like that. So he wants to make sure that he's safe there as well. And if you have any questions, definitely put them in chat, and I will try to answer them. I don't glance over at chat constantly, but I will try to pay attention. So here we see MorroW moving out. Now, as an observer, we can see this and go, all right, we know MorroW's not going to push. And why do we know that? Let's pause for a second here. Now, Sheth doesn't know that. He just lost his unit at the Zelnaga Tower, so all he sees is an army coming out, right? But we know that MorroW's not going to push. And the reason we know that is because if we look at the upgrades here, we've got 2-2 on the way, and +1 vehicle weapons as well, but they're nowhere near close to finishing, right? Stim is getting pretty close to finishing, but with the other upgrades going, we know that this is more of a scare tactic for MorroW. This is something that Terran players used to do a lot that I don't see them doing quite as often, to be honest with you, where they'll push out with a smaller force just to kind of show themselves, cause their opponents to make lots of units rather than lots of drones. And if we look, Sheth still not terribly far ahead in the workers because he's had to make so many units throughout the course of this game. And this is just another way for MorroW to stay up with his opponent economically, to keep up with him, right? MorroW putting a bunker down here at the end. I really, really like this as well. Just because if Lings try to run around like this, they'll have to kind of take fire from the bunker the entire way. So just really good preparedness by MorroW in this game, right? So a little push, MorroW turns around. You notice that he walks forward a little bit after killing the unit. That's because you'll have a little bit of vision after a unit dies. So Sheth sees the army moving this direction towards Space Shark here. He's going to start making lots of units, and then MorroW, as soon as he knows that vision is gone, is going to move that army back, right, and just kind of sit and defend his third. So getting a nice little tank spread and waiting for +2/+2 to finish. A lot of these types of builds will go for a +2/+2 timing. Sheth knows now, but the quote-unquote damage has been done. Now, Sheth, on the other hand, is going for his Hive. He's going for a Spire, so obviously moving up to something a little bit more Broodlord-oriented. Pretty common late-game ZVT. But this is a point as well where Terran players have felt a little bit awkward. You know, Terran players have struggled a little bit with the late game after the Ghost nerf. So Sheth kind of poking around with a lot of Lings. He made them. He might as well be active with them, right? And MorroW, now that 2/2 is going to be finishing, excuse me, is going to be moving out. He does also have Medivacs as well. So look at that nice timing, by the way, from MorroW. 2 Medivacs pop out around the time when he gets his combat shields, gets +1 vehicle weapons, and gets 2/2. What an awesome timing here. And as he moves out, he's going to start that 4th command center as well, so that if the push goes well, he can go ahead and try to take a 4th base here, or possibly here. So overall, just a really solid game played from MorroW. I really, really enjoyed watching this from the Terran perspective because, again, you know, it's just a lot of stuff in here that shows that MorroW just knows, you know, how a Zerg player plays and is trying to take advantage of that. So MorroW out with an army. And look at this. He even has a 20 supply lead at the 14-minute mark. That is actually pretty big. You almost never see Terran have a supply lead over Zerg at this point in the game. Usually, Zerg has a lead for most of the game until Terran, you know, wins a fight late game or something like that. Even then, a lot of Zerg players will be prepared. But MorroW knows where to go. He's going to move out and try to take out this 4th base, of course. Good fungals by Sheth. And, you know, I know I've been talking a lot about MorroW because we're kind of focusing on how MorroW is playing Terran in a kind of a cool, unique way to a certain extent. A little bit different than we see from players like Polt, you know, another player I like to watch a lot. But you can't really take anything away from Sheth. He really did play well in this game. He made a lot of correct decisions. I think taking a 4th was a correct decision. His army was just a little bit out of place. You know, if his army had been, if I pause it again for just a second, if his army had been like right here, and we had units coming up the ramp, he would have been able to fungal the Marines right here, be in a much better position. But as it is, MorroW rolls in and kills the 3rd base, and Sheth tries to re-expand here. Oh, and actually, let's back up for just a moment. There's something I want to make note of real quick here. So now, Sheth has this big attack. He knows he's losing the 4th. In fact, there it goes, exploding right now. The Broodlings coming out there. Like, we wish we were coming out of Broodlords. Oh, well. But Sheth going for that counterattack, right? Now, has he seen a lot? Yeah, he has. He only knows that MorroW's expanded. So many Terrans would leave their opening like this. This would be how a lot of Terrans' bases would look, right? No wall. How many times have you seen it where a caster is like, oh, he's going to take out that base. Oh, but the Zerg player does a counterattack. You know, how many times do you hear something like that, right, in a game of StarCraft 2? Well, MorroW's heard it enough times. He's going to go ahead and be prepared for this. And, yep, getting those depots up just in time, though. I got to say, that was close. He's going to lose a couple tanks here at the front. But as you can see, with this depot wall off, he's going to be perfectly safe from all this. He's even got the bunker in place. And Sheth knows that he's not really going to be able to do damage efficiently, right? He's going to be able to... He would be able to break through this if he really, really wanted to. But it just wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be efficient enough. He'd lose way too many Zerglings. Sheth, though, doing a great job of bringing those Zerglings back and flanking with this, and he will be able to crush this force by MorroW. So, you know, again, Sheth just playing really well this game overall, but at the end of it, you know, when the dust clears, when the army dies and the last tank explodes in a beautiful explosion. See, explosions do look really cool in StarCraft 2, don't they? I don't know, I like them. I think they look awesome. We've got 149 supply for MorroW and only 95 for Sheth, so about a 50 supply lead right now for MorroW. So you can really see, you know, that huge economy is really kicking in. You know, being able to take that third base and saturate it immediately. He's up to 68 SCVs plus mules. That's a lot of mineral income. He's going to be able to make a ton of Marines. He doesn't even need to worry about gas all that much. He's got enough to do with, you know, what he likes. In fact, he's got too much gas. He could probably get away with just having one at this base, maybe even skipping the gas at this base entirely and just going with this a little bit longer. Now, I think the reason why we have this is because if you've got this many SCVs, you might as well get gas. In fact, he's only got one in each. He's not even really worrying about it. So, yeah, just way plenty of gas, which is going to come in later in the game, going to come in a little bit handier. And even though he lost his army, we can see that he's still comfortable attacking, right? Because he knows that he killed all of Sheth's army too, right? And Sheth not only lost his army, but he also lost his base that was mining a lot. And he doesn't have this one up really and running yet. So MorroW's like, all right, I lost my army, but you lost your army and a base. Therefore, I should generally be safe to expand here. This isn't always the case. It's not always safe to expand in that situation. But in this one, MorroW making the correct decision, being like, all right, I think I'm going to be safe here. He's getting 3-3. He's getting his vehicle weapons level 2. So just, you know, more things for MorroW to kind of stay ahead here. Overlord pooping out some creep, but that's going to go away fairly soon, and MorroW is going to be able to take his 4th base. Sheth is going to try to do everything he can to stop this, but, you know, again, it's just very difficult. Sheth is certainly playing from behind here. These Zerglings coming in, and they are 2-2, and there is 3-3, and the Adrenal Glands upgrade on the way for Sheth, right? So his Zerglings are going to be very strong. He's making more Infestors. He's only got 2 out. Remember, he did lose some in this fight right here, so he had to spend some gas to remake some of that as well. But he's also going to have, you know, more stuff on the way. He's got that Greater Spire that just finished right now. But here's another thing, right? So MorroW moving out with that 2-2 push is a pretty good timing to cause Zerg to make a lot of units and spend a lot of their gas and minerals that they wanted to spend on Corruptors, right? Because usually you want to start building Corruptors in this situation when your Greater Spire is about half to 3/4 of the way done. But now, you know, Sheth just starting Corruptors now and only able to really make like 3 of them, right? He has to spend money instead on some Infestors as well. So that's some gas income that he would have liked to funnel in a different direction. And you can see MorroW's army just getting so large. I really like this by Sheth, by the way. A little bit of hidden Infestor tricks here. Quite cool stuff. So he's going to be able to irritate MorroW a little bit with this as well. But now MorroW, if we're going to pause the game for just a second, is taking this 4th base, getting his planetary up. That gives him a good position to push from. He can go from here down to this base here, right? This is going to be the direction MorroW wants to go. He already took out this base, right? He's going to drop and harass this again, and I think he does cause a cancel, actually. Let's see. I believe he does. Oh, he actually kills it without a cancel even. So, but right now, as far as army movement, MorroW's going to be wanting to focus on this side of the map, right? That's why he's dropping this side. Because keep in mind, let's kind of look at the mini-map for a second, if you can see my mouse pointer here. Look at the way MorroW's force is kind of going. It's starting at the main, moving across the top of the right, and then kind of coming down towards Sheth. That's kind of how these bases are oriented. It would be awkward to take this as a 4th base, because then you'd be kind of like bouncing back and forth. And because of this arc that he's taking, and Sheth, you know, normally wanting to expand around that arc as well, it would be awkward for him to move his army all the way across the map, you know, from here all the way across down to here, right? That'd be an awkward move for his army. He'd be very vulnerable in the middle of the map. Sheth could possibly take advantage of that. So now he's going to want to push down in this direction too. And this gives him a pretty good staging ground as well to start dropping in the main and things like that we're going to see a little bit later, right? Let me look at our time and see where we're at, because remember, we only have about 50 minutes for this show. Not very long. In the meantime, Infestor's doing cool Infestor tricks, killing off some SCVs in the natural and the main. I have to pay attention to that, or I have to direct your attention to that, because Sheth does do some awesome things in this game. And if you want to see the actual casted version of the game, just go to IGNProLeague on YouTube, and the VODs should be up right now, I believe. And then you can watch that there as well. So, not right now. I'd prefer you stay with this show now. But later on, you can go and watch that all you want. Watch it multiple times, because it was such an awesome game. But yeah, MorroW kills off this 4th base. And now Sheth is in a bit of trouble, right? He's got to try to re-expand here. This is a safer base for him to take, right? But MorroW is going to be able to continue to drop it. So Sheth's going to need to dedicate some forces over there to kind of have to worry about this. MorroW as well dropping the main. So moving into that kind of more aggressive late game here. This drop obviously not going to do a whole lot of damage. Medevac is going to go down, sadly. Oh, one fungal just to make sure it doesn't escape. But look at the supply again, 184 to 139, right? And let's take a look at the unit config station for a second. We'll pause it over MorroW's scary army. We'll even zoom it in and then we'll turn it so it's kind of an interesting view, right, while we talk about this, just in case nobody wants to look at numbers. You can look at the units instead. But look at the unit config station. We've got 64 drones to 68 SCVs. MorroW actually with a worker lead here, right? 90 Zerglings. He's got a couple roaches, some corruptors, infestors. Not going to really have a lot of broodlords on the way terribly soon. But Sheth's just in a really awkward spot. And this must have been kind of a hard game for Sheth to play all game long, because you get behind early on, and then that kind of starts that snowball effect where you kind of need to keep making units rather than making workers, right? So that's the situation Sheth's been in the entire time. Hasn't really been able to get that drone count up to where he wants it to be, right? But it's still not unwinnable. You know, Sheth still has a chance in this game. He had a chance for a lot of it, right? But he's certainly playing from behind. It's very difficult for him right now. MorroW, on the other hand, 68 SCVs, 9 medevacs, 9 tanks, and 70 Marines. 70 3-3 Marines very, very soon. Yeah, 3-3 just finishing right now. And he's adding on the Ghost Academy as well. One of the things that MorroW likes to do in his play, and he and I were talking about this morning when I spoke with him on Skype, is that he likes to add things on in the late game to just try things, right? Especially in a situation where you know you're pretty far ahead. You're going to be able to sort of experiment, right? And experimenting in the late game is really what's going to win things for Terran players. Now, Sheth actually is able to scrounge up enough resources to make 5 Broodlords right now, which is going to be a little bit difficult for MorroW to deal with, because MorroW doesn't have any Vikings out right now. He's starting to make the first 2. So if there is any criticism I would really have for MorroW, one of the things that I would say is that the Viking production started a little bit late for him this time. Maybe this should have started a little bit earlier, but the timings for this game are all off to begin with, just because of some of the things MorroW did earlier in the game to kind of change things a little bit, right? We saw Sheth kind of having to scramble right from the very beginning with his timings and things. MorroW trying to drop again, and that medevac is full of units and is going to die. Oh, so sad to watch. He's actually going to lose both medevacs, but it's okay, because he killed off this 4th base again. He's in a good spot. He sees the Broodlords, and he just pulls back. He's like, all right, I can't fight this. Oh, he actually does decide to siege up again. I think that's a bit of a mistake, but he will unsiege and move back. Yeah, you don't want to fight Broodlords with siege tanks. You're just going to end up, obviously, siege tanking your own tanks and your own Marines to death. Sheth tries to do a little bit of a surround here. And I think he does actually kill a lot of this army, if I remember right. So Sheth really, really playing well all through this game. This was such a well-played game by both players, but MorroW just has that advantage the entire time. So we are at about the 20-minute mark. We're a little bit farther. We're about the 22-minute mark right now. And let's kind of take a look at where things are, the status of the game. Supply about even for both players, right? Sheth doing a good job of producing. Worker count, though, still a little bit low, even on workers with MorroW, right, pretty much right now. But yet he's taking this base again. I can't talk apparently when I'm doing it for this long. But Sheth has really had a hard time taking a 4th base, right? MorroW's been able to come in at the right times, kill things. He kind of knows how a Zerg thinks, right? It's kind of like he's a Zerg, or he's a Terran player that went undercover as Zerg to learn all their secrets and then plays TVZ. It's not quite fair, MorroW. Stealing all the Zerg secrets, knowing all the Zerg timings so intimately. Sheth trying to come in here and do a little bit of damage, but MorroW again, you know, just really, really ready for it. He's got Vikings on the way now. Good fungals by Sheth. Like every time I watch a fight, I'm like, wow, Sheth is so good. He handles these Vikings so well, right? The only problem that Sheth has right now is that he just doesn't have the corruptor count to handle the Vikings. He's having to use a lot of infestor energy on the Vikings rather than the Marines. You know, now that the Vikings are kind of dying, he can kind of do it. But if we double-click these infestors, look at that. Not a lot of fungals in that infestor group, and that's going to allow the Marines to come in and do a lot of damage here. Excuse me. So now MorroW killing off the Broodlords, killing off the infestors. Oh, it's hard to watch. Sheth does actually manage to escape with some of these, I think. Oh, he lost like over half right there, but you know, overall just not really good. Losing those Broodlords. That was kind of the big army that Sheth needed to win with. Obviously, the game still goes for about 7 more minutes, but Sheth really, really needed that army to work better, and it may have if he would have been able to afford a few more Corruptors. That's kind of what really stopped that push cold. And you see that all the time from Zerg against Terran, where they'll be in a position where they'll have this big, scary push, but they'll be lacking Corruptors, right, or Corruptors. So the Vikings will come in, do a lot of damage. You'll have to use a lot of fungal growths on Vikings rather than Marines, and that's going to really kind of set Zerg behind, right? Yeah, it's a bit rough. So, right now, Sheth continuing to scramble. And this is kind of the point in the game where we kind of know where things are going. You know, Sheth's still doing a little bit of harassment here, which is kind of cool with his infested Terrans. I can't believe it took MorroW so long to find these, actually. It's kind of funny. Like, where are those infestors? I think he finally found him. Yeah, but Sheth continuing to just be a little bit annoying with all that. MorroW going ahead and going for a nuke as well. I know I saw him building some at some point, or at least if he does very soon. So this is the point in the game where MorroW is just very, very comfortably ahead. He knows that he's going to be able to sit on 4 bases. He's going to be able to take his 5th as well. He's got planetaries up at that, and he's just delayed Sheth by so long that Sheth just doesn't really have the ability to catch up at this point, despite his really, really good unit control. So let's actually do something a little bit different here. We're going to go through the rest of the game really quickly, about ×4. Just because, in case anyone's kind of curious how it ended. MorroW comes down, kills the 4th base again, has a lot of Marines in medevacs. He's able to drop into the main and do some damage there as well. Just kind of able to outmaneuver Sheth. Planetary there, wall there, keep in mind. Not a lot of Terrans building walls, right? So Sheth just doesn't really have a lot that he can do. This base dies yet again. And MorroW doing a lot more. So let's go ahead and go on. I believe there's a cool nuke at some point in this game, but we may have missed that. One of the bases did get nuked or something like that. I'm not sure if it was this one or not, but MorroW just kind of rolling over his opponent. More infested Terrans doing a little bit of harassment, but again, the planetary, you know, really causing it to not be much of a problem. And we are just kind of rushing through this because there's not a whole lot more to be gained from this particular replay, but I just want to go through it so you can kind of see the end of the game here. MorroW finally coming in and cleaning out the infestors. And, yeah, that's going to be about it, speeding things up. And one last fight coming up. Sheth manages to raise another army. I don't know where Sheth gets all his resources from. He's just so good at, like, retaking bases as soon as he possibly can. Another nuke coming down. Great EMPs on those infestors. And then, you know, no fungals, plenty of Vikings, plenty of Marines. GG, the nuke never even lands. And then that's basically the end of the game. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go back and look at the very start and just go over again how MorroW was able to get this lead that stretched through the entire game, right? It's a real credit to Sheth that that he was able to survive this long against something like that. That's so cool, man. Sheth is such a good Zerg player, right? But MorroW just has the better opening. You know, he plays a little bit better. So let's go through this again real quick. We're going to go on ×4, ×8 for just a moment here. And so we see MorroW not even walling off, deciding to put the barracks there as well, just doing little things he can to mess with his opponent. You know, I mean, the simplest thing, like building your barracks there instead of at your wall, is going to really make the Zerg think and be like, all right, this is a little bit odd. What's going on? Normally this is a 15 refinery, MorroW told me, but this case it's a 16 refinery. Try to build it on 15. It works out a little bit better. But the way that MorroW described it, as I'm going to slow this down back to normal speed again, is that this works kind of like the old Hellion expand, only you get your command center before you get the factory. So remember the original reactor Hellion expand? You would get the factory started, then you would put down your command center at about 30 supply, and then you'd be getting Hellions out. And this gets Hellions out at a little bit later time, but what it does give you is more Marines, which is kind of nice to have, right? So it's going to be that little difference here. A few more Marines, a little bit faster command center, but still you're going to get the Hellions quicker than if you went for, you know, like a normal reactor Hellion thing, right? So that's kind of where we're at with this. And now what's really kind of big about this is how MorroW takes advantage of this third base, because a lot of Zergs will respond by taking this third base, right? Sheth sees that the factory was, in his eyes, maybe a little bit late. He knows it's a fast expand, so he's like, all right, I'm just going to stay ahead of MorroW, right? I'm just going to take my third base. Now MorroW, because of the timing, because of only getting one gas and getting that factory a little bit later, is going to be able to make more Marines and kind of do some pressure with those Marines as well. So we're going to speed that up just a little bit. And here's where the damage is really done, right? We're going to keep that on ×2. He's got the bunker building here, and he's got those Marines in a great position. And this is the real damage right here. This isn't the real damage. The hit points that this hatchery is losing, this isn't the real damage that MorroW is doing, right? Because I think this hatchery actually survives the entire game. MorroW never even kills it, right? The real damage is the units that Sheth are making, the larvae that are having to be used for all this, right? The drones that he can't make because of this. And then I really love the timing of this, right? The bunker doesn't look like it's going to do a whole lot, but uh-oh, Hellions coming in, cleaning off all the Zerglings. The bunker lives a little bit longer, and so MorroW is able to just really do a lot of damage, killing so many Zerglings with this. This is still, like, blows my mind just how many lings he's killed. And let's take a look at the resources lost. Look at that, 28 units killed by MorroW so far in terms of Zerglings, drones, and things like that. Actually hasn't killed a single drone. That's interesting to note, actually. I didn't notice that my first time through, but that's actually something really interesting to note, right? Is that we've got 28 units killed by MorroW, but not a single drone, right? So that's, keep in mind that a lot of the Hellion expands and things like that are really focused on trying to get in there and kill drones with your Hellions, right? But MorroW's done a ton of damage to Sheth and hasn't even killed a drone yet. He's just making Sheth spend a lot of larvae on queens and Zerglings. He's getting to make drones now, but look at this. Again, I pointed this out earlier. Even workers at the 8-minute mark. That's definitely not something that you want to have happen as a Zerg player, right? So again, just this opening really being sort of integral in MorroW's later success in the game, and now he's able to follow this up with 6 Hellions of his own and continue to do damage, you know, continue to force Sheth to make workers or make units instead of workers. See, he's making roaches now. So that's going to be about it. So basically, let's go ahead and end that replay. We'll go back to the camera here. We've got about 5 minutes or so to kill here before the 50-minute mark is over. I think what we're going to do on Friday is actually going to look at the next game in the series, which was actually Liquid HeyPro, who came in after Sheth was taken out and played MorroW Zerg versus Terran on Daybreak. And we're going to kind of, I want to do that game and take a look at the differences in it, because that's one that MorroW then loses. HeyPro wins him. So we'll have to see, you know, what HeyPro did differently, what MorroW did differently, and kind of compare it to this game. Didn't have enough time to do that today, but that's going to be something that we're probably going to do Friday. So I guess we've got a couple minutes, so if anyone has any questions, definitely type them in chat, and we'll talk about that. In about 15 minutes, we're going to be going into Prime versus Acer on Team Arena Challenge 3, so that's going to be awesome. Kevin is going to be joining me for that, so don't miss it. But let's just go back and just kind of recap one more time real quick what we saw in that game, right? And what we saw was MorroW just changing his opening slightly in a way that caused Sheth to think things, to do things, that then gave MorroW the ability to come in and do damage then that you don't really get the opportunity to do that much in Terran versus Zerg. He got Sheth to build that third a little bit earlier maybe than Sheth was planning. A lot of Zergs like to take early thirds, but they don't expect to be bunkered at their third, right? Just kind of like a lot of Zergs don't expect cannons at their third base as well in ZVP. There's kind of these little things that you can do, right? To mess with that. And then the timings where you've got, you know, more Marines than usual, slightly more Marines than usual, and then you've got the Hellions showing up at a good time to then be able to continue to contain a little bit with the Hellions. So a really good opening. I love that TVZ opening, and it's not done enough. Like, people need to watch that game and start to do that opening, because I think it's honestly really good against Zergs on nearly any map, right? So let's take a look. What was the units lost difference at the end of the game? I'm not sure. We'd have to go all the way back through the replay. Sorry, I wish I would have seen that question a little bit earlier. Are your parents or grandparents from Sweden? Asks Takavox. I think my great-grandfather was from Sweden, hence my name, Lundqvist. That is where it's from. It is a Swedish name. And yeah, where can we get these replays? I'm working on that. I really am. We can't release all our replays right away, but I would love to be able to release the replays for Build Order Breakdown to you guys, so I am working on that. So stay tuned in future weeks. We'll definitely be taking a look at that as well. Let's see. Looking at chat, leaning over. Let's see. Gisoin asks, has Sheth been behind after that bunker Hellion pressure? Yes, that is when Sheth got behind, and he was pretty much behind for the rest of the game. It was a tough situation to get out of. Let's see. Oh, it's going by so fast. Nico 2010 asks, Doa, can you talk about the extra starports that MorroW got? All right, here is the deal with that. What MorroW kind of did was he saw that the Broodlords were coming. He was like, oh no, my Viking count is a little bit behind where it should be. I need these starports fast. Another reason as well is that MorroW wants the starports to be able to later on in the game maybe make Ravens if he wants to. I know that sounds crazy, right? But MorroW has done Ravens in late game TVZ before. Other players like QXC has as well. So initially the starports were just to get a high Viking count very, very quickly to handle the Broodlords. But it is something that if it goes into that late game situation, you can get Ravens and things like that, Hunter-Seeker missile for Broodlords. It sounds crazy, but it's definitely a good idea. Let me see here. Monster Employee asks, what if a Roach Rush comes early? That's a great question. This type of build has a lot of things in it that help you defend against that sort of thing, right? The key to stopping any rush is obviously scouting, right? You want to be able to see it coming. If you don't see it coming, then you're not going to be able to prepare. You're not going to be able to beat it. Now, that type of opening, you're going to be building the tech lab on your barracks, right? So if you just leave that there, you can make a couple Marauders. You already have a bunker at the front with some supply depots. And we actually did see Sheth put a little bit of Roach pressure on there as well. It came a little bit later than a Roach Rush, you know, quote-unquote, traditionally. But it did come, and MorroW was prepared with a bunker. But if it's coming really fast, like if you're playing that style and you see a Roach Rush coming really quick, if you scout it soon enough, you can just make a Marauder or two, put them in a bunker, and then make sure that's walled off. And generally, if you have a couple SCVs to repair there, you're going to be just fine against that type of thing. But the key, again, to stopping any rush is obviously scouting. If you don't scout it, you know, you can't be angry about losing to it because it's your own fault because you didn't scout it. So that's that. I think we are basically, we're out of time. Unfortunately, it's been 50 minutes. Sorry I didn't get to more questions, but I will try to. Join me again on Friday at 3 p.m. for another episode of Build Order Breakdown. We're going to probably take a look at HeyPro versus MorroW, the next game that was on Daybreak. Continue our study this week of interesting Terran versus Zerg games. And in 10 minutes, we're going to have Team Arena Challenge 3 between Prime and Acer, so don't miss that. The stream is going to go down, I believe, for just a moment. Oh, actually, no, it doesn't even need to. It doesn't even need to go down. So just don't go anywhere. And we'll be right back. Thanks again for watching. This was Build Order Breakdown. We'll be back with Team Arena Challenge in just a couple minutes.